Guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, I want to take this time to talk about a few things, right? But I want to stay focused in regards to what we're going to be talking about, which is sort of like womanhood, coming into our own, right? As you guys know, I'm getting older. Older, but nonetheless still fabulous, right? Still growing in fabulosity. Okay. But as I'm getting older, I had to navigate my early 20s without a role model. And these experiences are not just unique to me. They are found within the lives of many Black women. And one of the things that I start to find as I get older is that so many Black women are lacking in like a sense of self. Right. We give a lot of slack. I think culturally there's this sort of like normalization of tearing down men and women. And so you hear a lot about like just very aggressive, like violent type of, language centering women and trying to correct women and control women and things like that. And that's not really what I'm here to do. Right. We hear a lot of that, especially in regards to men, right? Like, oh, he's not man enough. He's not this, he's not that, all of that. But I think when you start talking about womanhood, I don't think that we have given loving critique and like instruction to women in a way that I think is productive, right? I think just tearing down women, calling women names, right? Attacking their beauty or their sense of beauty, that doesn't really help. And I think what a lot of people and men coming from, different spaces, obviously, I don't always think it's misogyny in the sense that like people hate women, but I will say we got to be honest. We got to be honest because this is so real. And I think I've seen this in my own life, right? I do think that women are given a huge pass for bad behavior. And I don't want to say that with a general statement. Okay. I think context matters. And when I say context matter, I think what I'm more so referring to is parenting, right? I'm not talking about women who are struggling. I'm not talking about women who are doing the very best that they can to show up for their kids, right? I'm not talking about women who are navigating these, murky waters of, loving a child, grieving the circumstances, loving motherhood, grieving the circumstances or grieving the divorce or, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about women who just deliberately choose to have children and neglect those children and prioritize themselves, and women who just quite frankly have poor character. And I think the reason why, like even for myself, right, I'll use myself, and I'm going to take my time with this because I don't want this to be offensive, but I do want to be heard. I've had a lot of friendships where I was betrayed, and that really shut me down in regards to having any other like female relationships. Like I was just done with it. Growing up, I did experience some jealousy. I went to like a lot of different schools and, I was always a new girl. I was kind of skinny, but I was pretty. You know what I mean? I was pretty. And, I wouldn't say that I was like, oh, I was jealous. They were jealous because I was so beautiful, right? I had my little phases, my little dorky phases. So I don't look back at my photos like, some of the Latinas do. You know what I mean? Where they got the swoop bang and the bangles. That wasn't my childhood, right? So I really did have a childhood. I looked like a child. I looked like a fifth grader and so forth. So I won't say that it was jealousy, but I will say that the material comfort and the materials, right? Like the fashion, things like that were afforded to me, a lot of kids growing up didn't have that, right? And so I think a lot of it was kind of rooted in a little bit of that. And just, again, I think just, if you're a quiet kid, if you're kind of to yourself, people just quite naturally will try to pick on you. But I think a lot of it, like I said, really came from just, having a little bit of something. And so, if that's your experience in public schools, then you know what it is. I don't have to go on and on about that. So, fast forward though. And, I started, coming into my own, becoming a young woman. And I did grow into having a sense of like beauty and a sense of self. And, it may be very uncomfortable. We won't get into that. But fast forward, and I was having friendships with women, and I didn't really know how to discern whether or not a woman had character, right? I didn't really know how to discern whether or not a woman was authentic and real and could be trustworthy, because those are the things that we don't really talk about, especially by and large when it comes to society, right? We don't teach women and we don't teach men, right? We don't teach people how to look for women with character, right? What we do is we affirm women in their beauty. We affirm women in their, reproductivity, in their sensuality, right? And how women really present themselves. But we don't ever really talk about women who have poor character. And so I say all that to say, I think so much of the anger and the frustration is because there has been such a lack of acknowledgement for growing up and being raised by women who have poor character, right? And it's the same, it's no different than the men who have poor character, right? Women who have poor character put men above their children. And even if that comes to their safety, they put work above their children, even if it comes at the expense of the children's development and safety, right? So overall, you're talking about women who just neglect their responsibilities, right? And there are men who do the same thing, but we don't hear enough about it in regards to women. And so I remember recently listening to this podcast with this mother. She was just saying, like, she never really hugged her daughter. And, you can see that in many ways her daughter is resentful. And I think one of those things that's interesting about the mother relationship that we all have with our mothers is that no matter what, we have to love this person, even if we resent this person, even if this person has never apologized, even if the society has given this person a rite of passage to say, hey, this is just who I am. You're going to have to get with it. You know what I mean? I'm not a hugger. I'm not a kisser. So what? You know what I mean? And it's like, if a child is saying, hey, these are the things I need from you, right? Like the expectation that we have for men so often who aren't socialized in a way to have emotional intelligence or expected to have emotional intelligence, at least not, postmodern era, is they got to go and get those skills. But when it comes to piss poor mothers, right, they're never really required or expected to go get those skills. And so when I think about women and Black women specifically, as I'm getting older and I'm thinking about my friendships, right, I'm realizing like, man, I have to start assessing women based on their character. I have to start assessing women, and the type of women I want to be around based on how they show up. Like, how do they take care of their kids? Right. And I can honestly say that I've met quite a few women who, one, are really closed off to feelings. Right. So there's a level of disingenuousness here where there's a level of a lack of authenticity. I think a lot of African-American women, or at least we've been socialized to be so hard and rough, rugged that even in our feminine circles, right, even in, I don't want to say feminine, but, I know that's kind of cringe, but, even in our friendship circles, even where, we're like in a powder room, so to speak, you know what I mean? Like in a ladies' room. And it should be a thing where we can all be ourselves and be fun and be free, right? And let me elaborate on that because Lord knows we live in crazy times. What I mean is, we're able to be ourselves. We're able to laugh and say little quirky things and show our wittiness or whatever, right? That we wouldn't typically do when we're in our relationships with our male partners, right? And I'm finding that space is no longer there. I don't think it ever has been there, or maybe it has, but it's not really prevalent. I think a lot of women are starting to show up in a way that is very disingenuous. And I think in wearing this mask and this facade to sort of like, create this sense of austerity, right? To kind of shield ourselves from the misogyny, from all of the things that we hear and deal with and have dealt with in the past, right? I think it makes women show up in a way that's very inauthentic. And I think it makes it really hard to develop a sense of sisterhood and to develop a sense of community and to really have friends when it's like everybody's so hard. You know what I mean? And, so that's something that I'm also kind of finding within my friend groups. I don't really meet a lot of women, or I'm not going to say I don't meet. I'm working on meeting these type of women, but I haven't had friends, in the past where we can really sit and talk about our feelings, where we can really sit and talk about the things that have hurt us. And we can really sit and talk about, the irritation at work or whatever, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I think there's this like, I don't want to say there's this movement, but I do think that the ways in which Black women have been socialized for so long, I think it's absolutely removing us from having any real sense of feeling. I know that life typically for many of us demands that we continue to press on and that we be tenacious. But I do think when we have friendships, I do think a main focal point, or at least within our communities that we say we have, I would definitely think that the expectation would be that we could talk about our feelings and we can be soft and we don't have to be, you know what I mean? Like, I think soft life has kind of become a thing of more so like, let's just look cute. You know what I mean? Let's just look cute. Let's just sound good. But we're not really talking about the things that, have affected us and that are affected us. And we know that, of course, right? Like you got to trust, trust has to be built, right? It has to be earned. It's not something that we're going to give away. But, even in the friendships that have lasted for quite some time. And so it's not everybody. But I do think that there is this sort of normalization. And I do think amongst millennial women, it's a little bit more common, that posture of austerity, kind of like, But yeah, and so I think that's just something I kind of wanted to bring to the light. And I think, like I said, for me personally, I'm looking at, women, and I'm assessing, the type of friendships and the women I want to be around. I'm basing it on character. I've always kind of felt uncomfortable, even with women moving like, oh, I'm just going to play this dude. I'm going to use him for his money. Like, that's just, I just can't really get with that. You know what I mean? It's not about being a pick me. I don't know him. I don't care. And I tell you guys this all the time. People try to say, I'm a pick me. Honey, do I look like I need to be picked? I mean, come on. You know what I mean? Like, let's pipe it down. Let's hear me out. You know what I mean? Let's be rational here. All right. Take it easy. So it's not really about a picking. Humbly, right? Respectfully, it's not about a picking. But it is just to say, like, just low character. And I think that because this behavior is encouraged, I don't think women start to realize how that changes you. You know what I mean? How that changes you as a person, how that changes your level of integrity, right? When we normalize conversations in women's circles and Black women's spaces, right? When we're like, oh, use them, get the money, whoop-de-whoop, do what you got to do, whatever, right? Whatever the language is, right? Because I know that's a sensitive topic, and I know context matter, and I'm not saying date a broke guy, and that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, when we encourage bad behavior, when we normalize this sort of like lack of character, which has been persistent within, I would say within the Black community, in terms of the language, right, and the expectation and the normalization, right, for Black women and their behavior, especially in regards to duping men, right. I'm saying that takes a toll on us. And I'm also saying it's the same thing for Black men, right? Keep gaming women, use as many as you can, take as many down as you can, right? Y'all gonna look up and y'all be based. Y'all be looking like base heads. Y'all know we say back in the day base heads, but seriously though, like y'all, because your spirit is so warped. So now you just got all these different type of vices, and you just out here looking crazy. And the crazy thing is like when you have poor character, you still think in your own delusional mind, because of social media and the world by and large is validating your bad behavior. You still think you look good, but people can see that spirit on you. You don't look too well. You're looking like a pauper. I don't care how you try to dress it up. I don't care what it looked like. You know what I mean? And I just want to say this too to anybody out there, man or woman, who, has had these experiences and who've never been validated and who've been harmed by women, right? Whether it was the women you met along the way or your mothers, this type of behavior, this level of, I don't want to say it's narcissism. I'll touch on this in just a moment, but people who have poor character never get away with the things that they do. Right? There is a consciousness. There is a spirit. We call the Holy Spirit. It is very much alive and well. And those things weigh on you. So if you're headed down the wrong path as a woman, I'm going to encourage you to, really take some time and think about your life. Take inventory of the accumulated experiences you've had up until this point, and think back on some times that really shaped you, some very pivotal moments in your life, things where you may not have shown up the best way, right? And how that really played a role, and how, certain decisions might have altered your life. Like, take some time to really sit with that, and take some time to sit with the little girl, right? That you were before all the craziness of the world, before the projections, before the rejections, right? Like, and start to make a self-assessment and take inventory and ask yourself, what kind of woman do I want to be? Right? Do I want to be the type of woman who is validated by women, by social media, by people who don't know me by and large, because I got this dude to buy me a Benz? Right? Do I want to be that type of woman, or do I want to be the type of woman that, I'm showing up differently, and I'm staying true to who I am? You know what I mean? I'm living within alignment to some type of value system, right? I know the girlies ain't on Christ no more. I know that was a trend. We knew that was going to come and go. That has passed, right? But American society doesn't really encourage value. The only value system is getting money. So, you just have to kind of start to take inventory of that. And I think, what I was saying about narcissism, and forgive me, I'm a little tired. The thing I was saying about narcissism is that it's very tricky. I think anybody who kind of partakes in society in a way that is very centered on getting money, right? Whether it's your job, whether it's your business, whatever, I do think you do start to take a little bit you do start to partake in narcissism in the sense that it does become very much you focused. I was looking at some definitions of capitalism because I felt like it was kind of thrown around a bit too much. And we know that, capitalism is really just institutions and organizations controlling certain goods and services. And I don't want to say certain, but it's like mass industrialization, but it's, the products and things like that are being distributed are upkept, right? Or produced rather by main organization, like top organizations, right? And I was reading in how like the 19th century, right? Like in early capitalism, a lot of people started partaking in capitalism, whether it was the CEO, the billionaire, whatever. It was also the local people. They were also taking capitalism into consideration as well. And they were partaking in it and it was working for them. They were selling their goods and services, et cetera, et cetera. And I was reading how they were just saying that, and I think this was honestly this might have been on Pen Press. I don't want to get too much into it. Like I said, I'm tired. I want to stay focused and wrap up. But they basically were saying that, the people who were also partaking in capitalism were justifying it. And so on one level, yes, America does call us to do some different things. But I think that's why for so many of us, we press and we talk about like Christ and our faith and things like that, because it's very easy to get caught up in the love of mammon. It's very easy to get caught up in money. It's very easy to get caught up in a world that is very much, outside of your value system. And before long, you find yourself winning in the world, but your soul is no longer with you, right? So we say gain the world, lose your soul. It's not just some mythical thing, right? It's like you keep doing things over and over that, bypass your value system, that go against things that you wouldn't typically do for capital, right? For money. And so, after a while, who you are is no longer with you. And before you know it, you don't even know who you are. But all you know is that, you play this game and that's how it works. And so, I don't want to get too deep in that and I don't want to veer too far left. I just more so was saying that I think anybody who's getting money is low key participating in some form of narcissism. So I think that narcissism by and large is socially accepted and oftentimes required to partake in our like patriarchal capitalistic society, So, I just wanted to kind of end by saying that there are women who also have poor character and we don't talk enough about it. There are women who also have poor character. There are women who also cannot be trusted. And I'm not just talking about in a relational sense. I'm talking about in the sense that she will stab you in your back. She will blind you, cut your dreads and steal your money. You know what I mean? There are women who, will lie and make up stories and paint everybody else as the bad guy. And the whole time you start looking at her and it's looking real sloppy. The story is not really holding up. You know what I mean? And so we don't really talk enough about it. I was thinking about this, when I think about certain wives, and I'm just going to be frank and say it. There are some good dudes who got some very piss poor wives. I mean, it's like, wouldn't know what it was to be a wife if you spelled it out in front of her. You know what I mean? Just very piss poor. You know what I mean? And they don't appreciate their husbands and they don't appreciate the good guys that they have in their lives because they're so caught up in social media and, the media by and large telling them who they should be. And I think that, there are a lot, not all, but there are quite a few Black women who move like this. You know what I mean? And it's like, who are you though? You know what I mean? Who are you? If you get online and you looking whatever, and social media is gassing you up, then it's like everybody's the it girl, everybody's the baddie, everybody's the, everyone's the main character. When it's like, that's not how it's going down. There can only be one main character. I'm not, I'm just saying. And yes, you be confident in who you are, of course. But everything I'm talking about right now is not about tearing down Black women. It's not about tearing down nobody's self-esteem. I'm coming against the arrogance that is very prevalent. I'm coming against the poor character that is never addressed, right? That is never expected of women. Okay. And I'm absolutely talking about how a lot of good men have piss poor wives. Yeah. Just like we always talk about how men have, how some great women have piss poor husbands. There are some men who absolutely have piss poor wives. Piss po. Would trade them for 30 nickels. You know what I mean? Would trade them for wouldn't know, honey, wouldn't know good man if she was married to him. You know what I mean? And so this ain't about taking nobody's husband. Let's relax. All right. It's not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm encouraging. I'm simply saying there too are women who exist in this world, in this world of uplift her, all right, who have piss poor character, who create organizations about empowering women and will turn around and look you in your eye at her reception's desk and won't pay you a lick of attention, who don't return calls, who are late to meetings, who are grimy, who are skep, who be lying, who are jealous and backbiting and competitive and dishonest and disloyal to their husbands and their friends and their community and their family. Okay? And some of y'all need to heal from this. I ain't talking about healing from poor character. I think we at the point now, y'all, we so grown. Girl, we grown. You are who you are. You know, they say things can change. I mean, I think, people say personality is not fixed. Well, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know about that. When I think about it, even in the Bible, right? Jesus did say that there are some people that are not his children. So who are the people? If everybody's the people, then nobody's not the people. You see what I'm saying? So that's just not true. That's just not true. You might decide to try some pineapple ice cream, but I don't know if you can change that personality. I think that's pretty much who you are. You know what I mean? That's why people with big hearts, they be getting played and they have to learn how to get wiser, and we have to get them the tools of the boundaries and all these different things. They got to learn how to guard their heart. They got to be wise as serpents, innocent as doves, right? Because they can't change who they are. That's how God made them, to be a loving, kind person. You're going to be that to the day you die. You know what I mean? You're going to be going through dealing with these humans, but you're going to be that to the day you die. So it's the same thing with the grimy, slimy. That's just who they are. They can't help it. They don't know no other way. They don't know no other way, honey. So just stay woke. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying stay fearful. I'm just saying stay woke. Just stay woke. And we make a lot of excuses for it. We justify it a lot of times. We say, oh, well, this is such and such, and this was their life. And, well, your mother this and your mother that, but we don't do that when it comes to fathers. We don't be like, well, my daddy did do 30 years for a crime he didn't do. And he didn't get no Marshall Project. He didn't get exonerated. He did that 30. He did that 30 bid. You know what I mean? We don't be like, well, maybe he just, we don't do that. With mothers, oh, well, we got to go down the whole ancestral lineage. We got to go down the whole line. We got to go back to the 1800s. We got to go back to the first time the ship docked to understand her history and her messed up ways. But when it comes to the fathers, it'd be like, he's a narcissist. Close the book, end the discussion. I'm done. He's done. We're done. And society be like, clap it up. But we don't never do that when it comes to these piss poor mothers. We don't do that. So, being a piss poor mother, it's not about because your relationship didn't work, right? That's coming from misogyny. That's ignorance. That's like a little child having a tantrum because their parents aren't together, which a lot of people do. But if you never had nobody sit you down and be like, hey, listen, it's over for that. You know what I mean? They're not getting back together. It's done. That's something to grieve. And oftentimes it's something to grieve at the time in which it happens, right? Like if we're 9 and we're 39 and we're still angry at that, I don't really know, right? And I don't want to say this jokingly because, trauma is real. Life events are real. They shape us. So you got to go heal from that. But, and I'm also not talking about, single mothers, right? Your relationship ending, you doing the best you can to care for your kids. If you don't make all the money in the world, you're still showing up. That's not being a piss poor mother. I think a lot of people think it's that. And excuse me if y'all heard that. A lot of people think it's that. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. So I don't want to put anything on it, right? Because I think I'll be here for another 30 minutes trying to hit every nuance. And, this is not really about attacking mothers or women. This is just to shine a light on the reality that there are some women out here who do not have character. And they too are able to capitalize just like narcissistic men, just like men who come out here and lie and cheat on their wives and sell you a book and a course and a life coach, whatever, right? That's not what I'm saying. Right? That's what I'm addressing here. That's what I'm addressing here. The fact that there are some of us who have poor character and it is never addressed. It is not expected. We are grimy. We are slimy. All right. Grimy, slimy. And we be lying. You be lying. You be lying about everything. You're not honest. You know what I mean? And some people got great husbands, right? This great husband. He's a good man. And you won't celebrate your husband. You won't be there for your husband. You won't support your husband. You won't uplift your husband and love your husband. And these conversations are tricky. So we're going to stop there, right? Because a lot of times, I don't know what it is about the male ego, but you get in there talking to your wife, like, get on there and maybe some ribs, anime. You know what I mean? Do it right now, right? So we don't want to encourage disrespect. We don't want to encourage, a big head, right? In marriage, it should be a thing of honor. Y'all should be honoring one another. You guys should be serving one another. But I'm addressing the fact that there are some women who are married to great men who they do not honor, who they do not serve, even if that man is serving them. And so I say all that to say these things exist. And I don't think that this is solely why some men are on the internet crashing out and being rude and disrespectful towards women. But it could play a role just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. So I do question, right, by and large, and I guess I don't want to say just through the eyes of men per se, because we don't want to, but I do question, is this why sometimes, right, like, let me think about how I want to say this, because I don't even know if that's going to make sense. No, that ain't going to make sense. So anyway, I'm choosing to end with this, There are great people in the world. Go find those people, befriend those people, be honest to those people, be loyal, be loving, be upright, be a person of authenticity, be yourself. As Black people, right? The media does a very good job at representing us in a very falsified way. And it is up to us, all of us, Black men and Black women, to choose to decide who we want to be as individuals, to have a strong sense of identity, to develop character, all right? And so that we can live our life in a way with principle, and we can live our life in a way where there's purpose, right? Because you never really get away with anything. You don't get away with wickedness. Right? It's just not how it works. What you will get is you'll be forgotten. Right. Technically, yeah, we'll all be forgotten, but like, you know what I'm trying to say. So I just want to leave you guys with that. I want to leave you guys with that. We're not talking about women who do their best to love, to show up for the people that they have in their lives. We're not talking about women who are imperfect, but are honest, right? We're talking about women who are downright low down. Okay? That's what we're talking about. And I think it's funny, getting older, I think in many ways, the ways in which good women find themselves caught up with these just bad guys, so to speak, right? What I really want to say is men of poor character. I think it's the very same thing for good guys as well. I think good guys find themselves with women of poor character, but there really is no conversation had about it. So we're having it today. And I hope this didn't offend you. I mean, I hope, if anything, what you take from this is deciding what kind of woman do you want to be. Womanhood is not about, it's not about stuff. It's not about materialism. Womanhood is to be embodied. You don't have to try to be a woman, right? When you're already a woman, you are a woman. God made you a woman, right? So with that being said, you don't have to dress up the outside. We're going to do that anyway because we're fly. You know what I mean? For my girls who get it, But I'm talking about, like, womanhood is embodied, right? When you have your baby, it's internal. You don't have to go out and, to do things externally to be, well, let me be mindful how I say that. It's womanhood is to be embodied. It is who you are. And so decide what kind of person you want to be. Decide what kind of woman you want to be. And that's all I'm saying. Because I just think what we have today is just a culture that just encourages bad behavior. And I just want to let you know, at the end of the day, you're going to have to live with your choices. So do your best to make good ones. Do your best to make choices that you can live with. Peace.